Well, guys, I've done it. I've spent the last 3 years of my life locked myself in a room and watching cartoons, doing nothing but watching cartoons, just watching cartoons for 3 straight years, making videos about it. I feel great! No, I'm serious, I do. Knowing I'll always be able to go home and have something at the end of a tough day to look forward to really helps me through a lot of really hard times, and we should never feel bad for like stuff made for kids, because inside of it all, there's still a little bit of kid inside of us. Anyways, that's happened to Disney vs. Stan vs. Nick. So this was always the final goal of these watch-throughs ever since I started my Stan 1 back in 2021. Throughout their existences, Nick, Disney, and Stan have always had their ups and downs, but I gotta know which is the best. Which really is the best place for cartoons. The way I'll do this is we're gonna do 4 different categories: the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, and the start of the 2020s. I also have a tie picker if I need it. I'll go over each channel's content from each decade, some business decisions, and other things that'll help me decide a victor. Also, this is just animation, and only their main content. No preschool series or Adult Swim. This is going to be a really hard video with how much of these shows and channels mean to me, but it has to be done. Oh, and I recommend watching my videos on the top 35 Nick, Disney, and CN shows, as this is a bit of a compliment to those. And I won't go as in depth with the shows here as I will there. Let's get into this.
3, 2, 1, go!
So starting in the 90s. Disney has some stuff in the 80s, but I feel like it's a little unfair to compare a bunch of shows to nothing. That means we get to start with the decade I grew up in! It was only for like 3 months, but hey, it still counts. Oh yeah, for Disney I'm counting their pre-Disney Channel things for the 90s, because, you know, have to. Anyways, CN immediately comes to a disadvantage, as its first series was in 1993 and is mostly lost, while its next one, despite being a lot of fun, is mostly made from pre-existing material, leaving their first true show to come in around halfway through the decade. They make up for it by having non-stop bangers: Dexter's Lab, Johnny Bravo, Coward Chicken, I Am Weasel, Powerpuff Girls, Courage, Ed and Eddie, Michael and Og. Okay, so maybe the bangers stopped at some point, but like 7 very distinct and still really funny shows that all deserve their iconic status. CN went for quality over quantity here in its early years, and it definitely worked out for it, giving it an early advantage. Nick, however, came out swinging with 3 different shows in its debut: Rugrats, Doug, and Ren and Snippy. These were the perfect picks to start off the network. One show that's a nice and relaxing slice of life, one that's bat freaking insane, and one that's perfect medium between the two. Really sets up their vibe perfectly, which is carried on to their current stuff, but it is also seen through the rest of their 90s material. Aubrey Monster and Amy Beavers for Insanity, Wild Thornberries and Hey Arnold for the more down-to-earth stuff, and Cat Dog and Rocco for the in-between. Oh yeah, and you also have a certain nuclear hydrogen bomb? Yeah, SpongeBob can't be underestimated. Granted, I'm only counting its first season for this right now, but that season has given us some of the best and most memorable scenes from the series. Not to mention, of course, setting up what's hands down the biggest show in children's animation since ever, really. Oh, and also Rocket Power came out this year. It's fine, has a few fun characters, but it's so unbelievably painfully 90s that it's hard to recommend it to a newer audience. Disney, though, they had a bit rough. They have almost as much as both their rivals combined in shows, and some can definitely back it up in terms of quality, like Gargoyle, Darkwing Duck, Recess, Goof Troop, Tailspin, Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and Pepper Ann. And a good few that are still good, just not as much as those, like Timon and Pumbaa, Mushroom Army, Bonkers, and Hercules. But you do have some stinkers like Mighty Ducks and Quackback. Mighty Ducks is at least carried by the villains being really funny and greatly performed, but Quackback is just completely expendable. And both are more painfully and datedly 90s and even Rocket Power. Laying out, frick man, Disney arguably has higher highs, but much lower lows. CN and Nick are much more consistent, and it's close, but I'm going to slightly lean towards CN. The fact they have so little, yet they're that good, yeah, they win this one.
Mathematical!
We now move on to the 2000s, the decade I grew up in. That means every show released after it is doo-doo. Let's reverse the order this time. Disney actually starts us off quite nicely. The Weekend is a show I've only seen a bit of, but I really enjoy what I've seen of it. It's a pretty good, more rounded series. Buzz Lightyear, Star Command, and House of Mouse are my childhood. Proud Family is a show that tends to be slept on nowadays, but was instrumental for getting Disney where it is now. Notable as the first animated show made exclusively for Disney Channel. Lilo and Stitch and Emperor's New Groove both expand both films greatly, albeit Stitch does it much better. Say the Barbarian is a really underestimated comedy series, and American Dragon is arguably ahead of its time as one of the first serialized kids animated series. There's of course a few lesser shows here too. None are truly called bad. Brainy Mr. Whiskers, Buzz and Maggie, Timo Supremo, Replacements, and Loading Space all aren't phenomenal, but aren't ones I'd say you shouldn't watch. They all have their funny moments and share characters I like. But then there's the big two. Kim Possible, The Voice of Generation, a show that arguably paved the way for a lot of shows we have now. I mean, an action show about a girl that doesn't sound like it would work back in the 2000s. But this show is just so entertaining for all audiences that it really doesn't matter. It's a show so good that killed one of Disney's longest running rules, the 65 episode rule. Basically, Disney used to cut off cartoons after 65 episodes, as that amount would give them exactly enough episodes to air during their own year, usually only giving exceptions to shows that are based on big Disney properties. Impossible to be another example, but it was simply too big to end, getting a 4th season and officially killing off this rule, which isn't entirely a good thing, because now Disney is much more strict on what's considered big enough. Speaking of big enough, if there was ever a show to give SpongeBob a run for its money, it's definitely Phineas and Ferb. I take it back. This was my childhood. Easily one of the most important shows to me. Probably the single show I go back to the most often. Also helped by it being easily Disney's biggest show. That created it just as good, if not better than most of their IPs at the time. And it's definitely well deserved. But then they just kind of sat around and did nothing for 3 years. Yeah, despite coming out in 2007, Disney released no original shows until 2010 after Phineas. Granted, Phineas is definitely an amazing final note to go out on. And honestly, they didn't even need a show to air alongside it, considering the juggernaut it was. But that may cost it a high rating when it goes to the competition. So not only do we have SpongeBob's peak with seasons 2 and 3, albeit with some of its lower episodes and seasons as well, but I argue 4 and 5 are actually pretty good. As told by Ginger, Fairy Odd Parents, Invader Zim, Chalk Zone, Jimmy Neutron, Teenage Robot, Dang It Fandom. That's one show with the kid with the arrow on his head that's probably good. I don't know, I haven't seen it. Cat Scratch, El Tigre, Penguin of Madagascar, Back in the Barnyard, and Mighty Bee. I don't think this is nostalgia talking. This is a better lineup than the 90s. There's a few I'm not as into, but nothing too bad. Family Chum Chum is a national treasure. This is not up to debate. Cartoon Network also had a fantastic lineup. Sheep in the Big City is a banger that no one knows. Time Squad is fun. Samurai Jack, no explanation needed. And then there's Robot Jones, K&D, Room Adventure, Eel Con Carne, Megazexual Foster's, Puppy Amiyumi, Juniper Lee, Camp Lazlo, Ben 10, and Alien Force, Crash 100, Chowder, Flapjack, and Sacred Saturdays. All just fantastic shows. There's a few on the lower end. I'm not super in love with Gym Partner or Schoolboy, but honestly, I think the worst thing to come from this decade is the later seasons of Dexter and Powerpuff Girls. Still, this is a great lineup. All 3 of these are. But if I have to go with, I guess Disney's last again. Definitely a great lineup, but 8 out of 10 is not cutting it against 2 easy 10s. And for who's better? Oh, frick. Oh god, I'm gonna have a lot of trouble here. This is even closer than the 90s. I'm gonna go with, frick. I could go with either. To make this tie, I'm gonna go with whoever has the best individual show of the decade. And we have to admit, I lied. I actually have seen that Arrowhead Kid show. So yeah, Nick wins this round. Who's up for Chinese? So the 2010s are a really interesting decade for animation. We had one channel that started great, but slowly got worse. One channel was consistently really good, and one that was consistently really bad. And I guess it's time to start with Nick this time. Hey, sometimes it's good to start with bottom material. I mean, we start with Peak Fiction, and a show the internet has guessed me into loving. And hey, early 2010s does have some fun stuff, like Korra, Kung Fu Panda, TMT 2012. I guess Robot Monster is fine enough. Then we just kind of nosedived. I mean, there's some really great stuff here, like Hardy Beaks, Welcome to the Wayne, and Rise of TMT. But then you have Sanjay and Craig, which I have an ironic love for, but objectively it's pretty lame. Piggo, Banana Cricket, Bunch into the Beast, and eventually Kid Danger. Not to mention, this is really when Nick leaned heavily on SpongeBob, which also affected the 2000s, but nowhere near as badly as here. There's a reason only 3 shows this decade got a 3rd season and more. Oh yeah, the 3rd one is... I wish I could be... Yeah, so I think it's safe to say Loud House is the biggest show Nick has besides SpongeBob. For kids, no one really above its age demographic likes it, which doesn't apply to a lot of shows mentioned before. Genuinely, Loud House is one of the most interesting cartoons ever created for everything but the show itself. Maybe I'll make a video on it, I don't know. But just like SpongeBob, Nick put all their eggs in this basket. But like, this is not a good basket. Cartoon Network counts Swing with Adventure Time regular show back to back. Generally, you wouldn't need anything besides that, but this year gave us Symbiotic Titan and Generator Rex as well. Plus, we also got in the early years Gumball, Steven Universe, Clarence, Overyard Wall, and Peak. While things slowed down as the years went on, we still got some great things, like We Were Bears, OKKO, Crazy Creek, Summer Camp Island, Mau Mau, and Infinity Train, all of which really deserve more love than they got. Sadly, we must have the Powerpuff Girls maybe. So, okay, I've been focusing on mostly the main studio shows. If I include the other shows, it would just be too long, but also just know that if I did, the ratings would not change at all. With that said, I do kind of have to mention one non-studio show here. Listen, Teen Titans Go is not as bad as people make it out to be. It can be funny. The original show is still there. I've seen the scene of the team killing Batman's parents literally once a week because Twitter has short-term memory loss. So I'm kind of just gaslighting to liking this. It's fine. But yeah, it's hard to argue against that this became CN's SpongeBob for the worst. Blah, blah, blah. You all heard it before. Constant marathons from the face of the channel. You prioritize over all their series. Yeah, not good things. And that continues to this day. Disney comes after. Finally. A round where they aren't last place. Yeah, Disney was great this time. Not perfect, but they really carried this decade. Star Wars Fish Hooks, Kick Buttowski, not fantastic shows, really fun ones. Gravity Falls, which is like my favorite show of all time, and the one that means the most to me. And yeah, this alone is winning it. Post Randy Cunningham, Tron Legacy, Motor City, Wonder Over Yonder, The 7D, Pen Zero, Star Versus, which like you get ending stuff, but it's a major show for the channel, and I think that the first 2 seasons still hold up. Oh yeah, and Milo Murphy, Tangled, DuckTales, Big Hero 6, Big City Greens, and Amphibia, and off the decade. Sure, you have a few stinkies like Pickle and Peanut, but I really think they do nothing to harm how good this lineup is. Yeah, this is easy. Disney's the best. CN has big highs and big lows, and Nick has tough puppets, so it's gonna be a complete wash. Now, obviously, this decade is not over yet, but I feel like we have enough to rank it, because this is setting up to be one of the biggest decades for animation, and not for good reasons. I'm going to do something no one's ever done. I'm going to actually defend Modern Nick. Yeah, the overuse problem from the 2010 still carries over, but they've really branched out a lot, and thanks to Paramount Plus, have had a lot more varied series like Star Trek Prodigy, For a Time, Big Nate, Monster High, and Transformers Earthspark. The SpongeBob spin-offs aren't super good, but I mean, they're at least trying new things. Yeah, Modern Nick isn't great, but they're trying. I think that deserves some praise. Disney has constant great ideas ruined by dumb business decisions. Show-wise, it's great. Owl House, Ghost of Mom McGee, Moon Girl, Kif, even Hamster and Graham Hayes aren't amazing, but they're still fine. Yeah, there's some business frickery, no real promotion for a lot of these, and the really unfortunate cancellation of the Owl House, but still, they're doing really well. Cartoon Network is not. Yeah, it easily got roughed up the most here. Only 2 new series at all. We Bear Bears and Alien from Earth. One's a mediocre spin-off, and the other's a fun setup for season 2 that'll never come out. I mean, we've had 2 interesting shows set up, but they were both moved to Adult Swim for no reason. CN is dying, and I sadly have to say it, this is the worst performance I've seen from any of the big 3 from what I've discussed. I hope things can turn around, but sadly, CN is a corpse. But hey, Disney's doing well. And there you go. This is a definitive answer to... Frick, it's a tie. Oh, no. I hate when people do these frickin' things and in a tie. It's a frickin' cop-out. It's a waste of time. Let's talk about the movies. I also did a video on this one. CN is probably the most consistent, releasing movies from 2002 Powerpuff Girls movie all the way to the last year's Craig Before the Queek. Plus the Gumball film that's been floating around in limbo for years. In between that time, we got a lot of really great movies too. Big Picture Show, Regular Show, Ego Trip, Race Against Time, We Bear Bears, the Billy and Mandy Trilogy, Operation Zero, Steven Universe, Destination Imagination. Yeah, these are all a really good sign lineup. We really had Adventure Time never got one though. Nick's the most mixed here. You got all-time classics, even some modern classics. The first 2 SpongeBob films, the first 3 made-for-TV Fairy Odd Parents movies, Danny Phantom specials, Enter the Florpus, The Jungle movie, Static Cling, The Rise movie, Roy Arthur in Paris. Yeah, a really solid lineup. But then you have some that are just okay, like Wallace Thornberry, Sponge on the Run, the odd-numbered Rugrats films, Witchology in the first Oliver movie. Plus some actual garbage like Loud House movie and Phantom Planet. Disney doesn't have as much of their rivals, but they have to make up for it in quality. Both Phineas and Q movies, School's Out, Lost Lamp. Not a lot, but they're so good that they can rival Nick's best. With only like Doug's first movie dragging it down. I almost did give the edge to Nick. But then I remember the Goofy movie duology technically counts for this, and yeah, Disney pulls ahead. Neither however compete with CN, with the black and white checkered pattern fittingly hitting the finishing line for anyone else. Cartoon Network, in my opinion, has the best cartoon lineup.
Mathematical!
So that was super close. Every channel here has super big highs and super big lows. But I feel like if you stack up all the shows against each other, I think just barely CN's consistency pulls ahead. Disney relied on their live action shows and outside projects for a long time, but they really pulled through in the end. Nick definitely fumbled the most. They're still really good. Just with a larger selection of shows, I'd rather not watch compared to the others. No over-reliance on certain shows. I think you can argue that the over-reliance isn't on our heads and not theirs, considering how no one talks about these shows until after they're canceled. To look at a different channel, when Ghost of Molly McGee ended, The show's creator gave a big detailing of how happy he was that the show got as far as it did, and he got a comment bashing Disney for canceling the show. They responded that Disney was actually super helpful in every step of the way, and then ending the show was reasonable due to low ratings, and instead shifted the blame to people pirating the show. Now, Grand Owl House is definitely killed because Disney's fault, but alas. Streaming is a big thing now, and some work for it better than others. Nick gives heavy focus to Paramount Plus, while Disney is surprisingly reserved for anime content on Disney Plus. And Max has a lot of anime-ish content, few with CN, that's before bringing up the constantly removing shows. Still, Adult Swim's checkered pass blocks is a good way to keep these shows alive. Now that's the end of this video, but I want to do something a bit special for the end here. This is paying off 3 big top 35s. So, as a thanks to everyone who watched those videos, I'm going to rank every single show from those lists, all 105 of them. I'm going to only use the shows from those lists, though if I remade this, there'd be some like new additions, like Moon Girl would be on Disney one, but only those 35. The rankings will be a bit different from the actual list because the paintings have shifted a little bit. But yeah, here are all 105 shows from that list ranked.
Is that it?
No, that is not it.
And the top 10 are, well, we gotta keep some ambiguity, don't we?
What? What? Everybody stop singing!